In an earlier video you saw my conversion of my 2005 Tarpon 160i to Phase 3 Air Pro seating. Seat back is folded down right now, so you can't see it very well, but that's what it looks like. Of course it's adjustable, and I am now getting ready to upgrade this same kayak that I put the Phase 3 Air Pro seating in to equip it with a Torqeedo 403, like the one that is on the back of my wife's boat, so that I will have the same mobility that she does and I can actually keep up with her on the water. So I'm going to be stripping some stuff off. We'll be making an aluminum bracket similar to the one that you see here, and installing the motor and positioning the battery behind the seat the way I did on hers, and equipping it with some sort of mechanism to hold on to the motor control. I haven't decided whether I'm going to do the same thing that I did on hers, or whether I'm going to install a pedestal mount in this area that will hold the controller approximately in this location facing this way. I'll also be replacing this bungee cord on the back and rerouting it through the fittings in this location and this location, so that the bungee is on this side instead of this side, and then I can use this side to route the motor lock cord on the Torqeedo, which is the cord that keeps the motor down when you're in reverse. As you can see here, it runs through the bottom part of that fitting and the bottom part of this. In order to do this, all this rudder cable has to come off, cording rather. We have to take off the rudder, we have to take off the hold down fitting for the rudder, and take off the piece that's mounted to the back of the hull that holds the rudder. These two bolts right here end up being the bolts that hold the aluminum bracket for the motor once I get that made, and holding the motor mount in position. The shipping weight of nearly 30 pounds, you'd expect this box to be pretty stout, and it is. It's all double thickness corrugated. When you open the box, the top shelf in the packing has a variety of parts and pieces in it for the installation, the rope that you use for the mechanisms to hoist the motor and to secure it in place for reverse operation. The battery charger is on the upper level. Instruction manuals in virtually every language known to man. The cords, both international and U.S. domestic, for the battery charger. The rubber pads for various things. The ball mount, some of the ball mount equipment. The blind fasteners for installing the ball mount, along with the wrench that holds them still while you tighten them up. And the rest of the items in the carton are on the second level. The second level in the carton includes the motor arm, which is right here. Obviously the motor with the yoke on it, and the infamous fin with the company name on it. The controller is over here underneath that with its cable, and here is the battery. And in this unit, because it's new, we have a battery that is a different form factor than the one that came with my wife's unit that I purchased earlier, which was previously owned. But I don't anticipate a problem being able to mount this one in a manner similar to the way I mounted the other one. This bag of hardware, which was folded up in here, includes the fasteners that are used on the ball mount if you don't have to use the blind mounted fasteners, which I do, along with the rubber pad that goes underneath it, and these pads here which go underneath the yoke mount that the motor tube sits in on the back. We'll get to that when we do the installation. This bag has the blind fasteners in it, which I will have to use. And one thing I'll point out, and I don't know if it's been corrected yet, but if you buy a newer kit, the drilling instructions in the instructions are based on the previous supplier of these blind fasteners, these expansion bolts. So measure the fastener to drill your holes. Don't go by the instructions, because the instructions have the old hole diameter in them. Okay, so I've scribed a center line on the piece of aluminum and drilled 2 1/4-inch holes 5/8 of an inch apart, and put the piece of aluminum on the back of the kayak to make sure that it snugs up tight against the what used to be the mounting point for the rudder, and it does. And now I'm going to mark it so that I know where to take it out and bend it. One thing you do not want to try and do is bend the aluminum on the boat, because you'll pull that embedded piece out of the back of the hull and then your hull is junk. So we're going to mark it and then take it out and bend it, and I'll bring it back and show you what it looks like after I do that. I'm just going to mark it and stick it in a vise and smooth bend it. I'm not going to try and right angle it or anything. It'll end up looking like this one. Okay, I enlarged the holes in the aluminum to 5/16 just because I wasn't feeling comfortable with on this hull with the way the bolts were going in and out of that brass embedded piece, and I didn't want to strip something. So we're now at 5/16 holes back here, 5/8 of an inch apart. Now here's the piece bent to go on the back, what we have to do now is come up here and locate this screw hole, because this is the front anchoring point for the bracket, and then we're going to mark the aluminum and go and cut it off so that the bracket only goes forward to this recess a little bit. I've marked the point where I expect to cut this off, and also about where the hole is going to be, but I'm not going to do anything further here, because the next thing I have to do is position the ball mount between the recess for that screw and the recess for the handle, so that I know where that's going to sit, because that's going to determine how far this way I can go away from this mark, cutting this bracket off. So next thing is get the ball mount out of the box. A quick check, the motor arm in the new kit is the same length as the motor arm in the one I already had, so the ball mount will be going in about the same place, and it mounts with blind fasteners, and it's going to be right in this area right here. And now you see why cutting that aluminum bracket off, you hold off, because you don't have much space on either side here. So we're going to spend a minute and center this up. I'm also going to take a pen and mark the center line of the boat using the screw holes as a guide as to where that is, so I get the ball mount here directly on the center line of the boat. And I think I'm gonna mount it this way this time, as opposed to on the center line, because of the way the rubber pad goes under it. One thing nice about the Torqeedo, folks, is everything is in Ziploc bags, so you can open the bag, take out what you need, and seal the bag back up. This is the rubber grommet that goes under the ball mount, and I actually bought extras of these, so I'm going to work with 2 for this, because of the crown and the hull where this is going to mount. So this will be the location of the ball mount right here, between the recess for the handle and the recess for the what used to be the rudder string guide. And I've got 2 of the rubber pads under that. I'm probably going to trim out the center of one of the pads to get the left and right hand holes down a little closer to the deck when I tighten the fasteners up. There's no way to get to any of this underneath the hull, so this is a complete blind operation as far as the fasteners are concerned. The fasteners that they provide you are essentially sheetrock style wall anchors, butterfly bolts if you will.
Actually, they're not butterflies, they're spread anchors. So the next thing to do is mark the drill holes for this and measure the measure the anchors and drill the holes. As you can see, it'll allow you to get down in the hole and mark the hole. You could do this with a scratch awl or even a small center punch, but this is a lot easier to do and a lot less potentially harmful to anything. So here's the 4 holes that have to be drilled to put the ball mount in. One of the other things, and I don't know whether this was intentional on their part or an accident, but there is a mold line in the ball mount. It runs all the way up over the ball. But the mold line happens to go through the center line of 2 of the holes on opposite sides. So you have a great alignment mechanism to get this piece, the ball mount, directly on the center line of the boat when you lay it down to mark the holes. These are the anchors that Torqeedo now ships with their motor kits, and these are 3/8 of an inch in diameter. If you caliper this neck down here and also right underneath the washer in this area, you go back and forth between 3/8 and 23/64. The instructions still have a requirement for a 0.47 inch hole, 12 millimeters, to be drilled. That's too big for these anchors. I went all over looking for a 12 millimeter drill when I did the other boat, and I found it, and then they sent me these anchors because the other kit was used. I needed these, and fortunately I measured them before I drilled, but the instruction book has the wrong diameter in it for the anchors they're currently shipping. So we're going to pilot these holes with 3/16 and then open them up to 3/8 in order to put these in. You see how quickly the large drill bit grabs the polyethylene and goes through it, so you want to be very careful hanging onto the drill and drilling these big holes. I noticed that when I was doing the seat conversion on this. You got to be very, very cautious about how you drill holes in this stuff. Unfortunately, I'm a one-man band doing this. I don't have anybody to hold on to the camera. But what I'm going to do now is I have this driven down through the hole. This is a screw that goes with it, and you need a number 3 Phillips for these. If you don't have a number 3 Phillips, stop what you're doing, go to the hardware store, get a number 3 Phillips. If you try and use a number 2, you'll ruin the screws. What happens is when you tighten the screw down, the fingers on the shaft of this base spread out underneath the polyethylene and anchor the threaded sleeve into the plastic. And that's how and then you take the screw back out and put the ball mount on. I'm going to tighten the first one up, and then I'll take the screw back out and show you how these teeth have pulled down into the plastic to hold that and keep it from turning. Almost forgot to explain this. They provide this wrench which has a hole through it that you put the screw down through, and then these small screws protrude out the bottom of this bar and catch the openings in the shoulder of the sleeve that you're anchoring in here and here, which allows you to keep the shaft from turning while you're tightening the screw and anchoring the sleeve into the polyethylene hull of the boat. Okay, here's the mount that's already been screwed down, and you can see it's tight down to the deck pretty much. These I've just set in the holes and popped them through with a rubber mallet to get them down into the holes, and I'm now going to run the screw into each one of these the same way I did this one and bring them all down onto the deck so that we can mount the ball mount. As you can see, with even with the 2 gaskets under this ball mount, there's still some gaps with the screws tightened down as tight as I dare pull them. So I'm going to take this apart and put some sealer in there and perhaps cut the center out of one of the 2 gaskets to fill that gap up and seal off any potential water leakage into the boat through those openings.